Anne mentioned at the beginning that we would be introducing ourselves a little later on. This is the later on. We're going to ask each one of you to certainly tell us your name, where you're from, and what it is, what your connection has been with Redemptorists, or what it is that has drawn you to Redemptorists or to Redemptorist spirituality, maybe even to sharing in the mission of Redemptorists, kind of depending on what stage of life you're at.
I came to St. Louis 24 years ago. I walked into the Rock Church the last Sunday of Ordinary Time before Lent, and Father Chuck Firewaltz, who's here, was the pastor of the Rock Church at that time. And I didn't set foot in another church in St. Louis for about 20 years after that. There was such a spirit about that place, and that all emanated from Chuck at that time. And the longer I stayed there was just this spirit, and I had heard of CSSR. I knew nothing of the Redemptorists at that point. I knew what a CSSR was. And when I was in high school, I had read Ernie Larson's Good Old Plastic Jesus and all that sort of thing. So I knew about that. But then I found out who the Redemptorists were, and so then in 1995, Father David Pollock, who came up from St. Louis with us this morning, I asked him, I was married at the time, and I asked Father Dave if there was a way that I could align myself with the Redemptorists even though I was married. And he said, well, we're trying to get this thing together with the lay missionaries. It's over at Domus Dei with Brother Dan Korn, Brother David Worthman, and one thing led to another. 1997, 20 years ago, Craig Franklin right here, Alicia von Stamwitz, and a couple other people, we made our first commitment to the Redemptorists. That was 20 years ago. And for 20 years, it's been fits and starts locally in St. Louis. We've had changes of leadership of the group. It's not been an easy go.
My name is Craig Franklin. I am also from St. Louis, a member of St. Alphonsus Rock Church. And in the early 90s, I would say 1993, 1992, it was brought to my attention that the Redemptorists were thinking about starting a lay missionary program. And I attended meetings for the first 2 to 3 years where we were in the formation stages, not forming the lay Redemptorists. And then from 1995 to 1997, under the direction of Brother Dan Korn, there was a formal formation process that we went through. And again, in March of 1997, Mike Thomas, Alicia von Stamwitz, and several others made our first commitment to the lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. And it has been ongoing ever since. We have not, there's not been 1 minute that I have regretted it. I love the Redemptorists. I love being involved with the Redemptorists. I love what the mission is about, and I try to live my life each day according to what the mission says we should. And sometimes it is difficult because I am human, but at the same time, I am making every effort to follow that
For
path.
years, because my marriage wasn't working right, so for years I never went to church. When I moved to St. Louis in 1987, and I hadn't gone to church for, like I said before, for years. So I came here in 1987 and I started looking around for a church. And I drove around to all the Catholic churches that I could get to, and none of them really touched me. And in January of, I think 1990, I went to the last Martin Luther King celebration that we have. It was held at Rock Church, so that's where I'm now. And I went to that, and when I heard Father Maurice, it was just mesmerizing for me, and I said, I found my home. And I've been there ever since. Craig and Christine were the ones who really showed me how to get into this organization. Thank you.
So I work at LaGuardia Publications. For the last 2 years I've been assigned to ministry there. But before that I was doing, for 15 years, I was doing ministry at the Shrine in New Orleans to Silos. And what really drew me here was because we do the partner in ministry program at LaGuardia in the St. Louis area. Greg May, John Schmidt, myself, and some of the ones that you're going to meet. For the last couple of years we've been trying to revive it. So what we're trying to do here is learn a little more about how we can enhance that, but also how we can connect to the bigger picture.
Bartos, and we've been parishioners at Sacred Heart in New Smyrna Beach since 1986. So we've known a lot of Redemptorists, and we just came to love them and everything about them so much over all these years, and we've been in lots of ministries with them.
I became very good friends with Frank Brown. You all call him Brownie. God rest his soul. Good fisherman, and one time coming home from fishing, he asked me, did I ever think about the diaconate? 20 minutes later, when I stopped laughing, I told him that he obviously had mistaken the quality of the fisherman with the quality of the man. I'm happy to say that I'm in my 5th year of diaconate formation. God willing, I'll be ordained June 9th of this year.
Parish also, and I'm a convert to Catholicism, and my brother in Christ, Lou Bartes, was my sponsor in RCIA, and I'm fascinated with the Redemptorist charism and want to learn more about St. Alphonsus' teachings.
We found our home there.
My name is Christine Blood, and I am a member of St. Alphonsus LaGuardia Rock Church in St. Louis, Missouri. And I have been at that parish. Well, my family moved into the parish in 1963. Father Leahy was the pastor at that time. And I've been there ever since. And just kind of grew up with the Redemptorists, met a lot of Redemptorists. How I got into the lay mission program is one of the members, Gracie Hutchinson, some of you may know her. She told me, you do a lot at the church, you're involved in all of this. Why don't you come and, join this program? And so I was like, oh, I got so much on my plate now. But she said, I think it'll be a really good fit for you, and just come. And so that's how I got started in it. And then when this opportunity came up, I'm a teacher. I never take off from my job. So I said, well, my other partners have been all over the place at different conferences and things like that, and I never took off to do that. So I said, I've been at my job for a long time. I'm just going to do this because I want to see what's going on with other lay missionaries and, partnerships. So that's why I'm here this week.
With Lance and John and St. Teresa's Parish, which is a Redemptorist parish. I have known Redemptorists just about all my life. They came to my grade school and my junior high school, and my husband and I were married in a Redemptorist parish, and we've been very, very much so nourished by Redemptorists all our lives. And when the associate program was going to start up in the Edmonton, Toronto province, my husband and I were part of that beginning. And right now I'm on a mission as well for the Edmonton-Toronto province for Partnership Mission, which is a real pleasure. I find the gatherings that we have every month kind of nourishes us for the ministries we do outside of our parish and in our parish and in our lives.
I met Father Kevin Freyer in 1990 when I was doing my Master's of Divinity degree at Catholic Theological Union, because I'd always liked to learn because I've been a catechist for 42 years. And when I met Father Kevin, I had a retreat with him, and then the funny part about it was his office staff was having trouble or something. So he asked me to come in the office, would you mind helping us out? And of course I whipped through the mailing so fast, and then ever since then I was always helping and everything. And then eventually once I got my degree, I was working with him on retreats for almost 25 years. And I became, I went to St. Michael's. They had a group with Ken Sedlak and in the 90s after this group here. And I made my promises here in this chapel with Jackie, who I found out has since left, but made our promises here in the late 90s. And then after that, I helped out with the novitiate, because the novitiate was in the building next door after the Villa Redeemer closed. And I've kept up with most of, as many Redemptorists as I can over the time. And that's one of the difficulties I have, is I love the Redemptorists very much, but in the place that I live, it's very difficult to, meet up with the Redemptorists. So I'm hoping that this kind of organization can grow so that I can still be a part of it.
This is Peter, and I'm Christine, and we're from the Extra Patrium, Vice Providence. And we were pretty much raised by Redemptorist priests. Since younger, I received all my sacraments from First Communion, my confirmation, and then we were taught and married by a Redemptorist. And after going away to college, coming back, went back to, and then now we're working in Long Beach, out of Long Beach, California, helping the priests over there, over there.
Good.
So.
Okay. My involvement would be support, doing the technical support for the IT works at the Redemptorist in Long Beach, along with magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
our love for the Redemptorists is when our call was for, we live maybe 15 minutes away from the formation home, so we get to visit the brothers and all the priests. And our call was to be in the kitchen cooking for all these young men and all these wonderful priests that we met. And we had 4 children of our own, and we always loved the vocation. But when watching all these young men come to give their life to follow Jesus' foot, we just adore them and support the Redemptorists as much as we can. That's our love for the Redemptorists, and we continue to support them all the way. Yes. Thank you.
I got connected with Redemptorists because it was at Holy Rosary Parish in Jacksonville before they left. And Father Parker got his first assignment at Holy Rosary, and we became very close, and from that closeness, I learned about the ministry. I'm glad to be here.
I had not heard of the Redemptorists before a long time ago. I had been working with many different orders in Catholic hospitals and hospices, which was my work for 30 years as chaplain and bereavement coordinator. So I've worked with the abandoned and the marginalized, because there's no one more so in our culture than those who are in grief or sick or dying. And the first time I heard of the Redemptorists was when I moved to Tucson 14 years ago. And I've lived long enough to know when the Holy Spirit's going to call me to something, and I get this kind of restlessness inside. And it's not the same as when I'm just bored. It's a different restlessness. And I was drawn to the Redemptorist Renewal Center, sometimes called Picture Rocks, and I began teaching there in the spiritual direction program, because I've also been doing spiritual direction for 30 years. And so I began working there, and then I became familiar with the church and joined the church, and that's how I began to know the Redemptorists. We have 4 priests, and all of them are individuals and lead us in different ways. But I was helping during the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the Retreat Center, writing the history, and I said to Father Greg May, why don't we have an association here, because it was very clear to me that that was what was missing. And I had known the
You've embarrassed him. Look how red he is.
He has since done something about that. But I knew what had happened. I'd been in an association before, and I knew the power of that to the people, how helpful and spiritually deepening it is for the people. And so I just, you know how when you follow Spirit, words come out of your mouth. One day I said to Father Paul, if you ever get in an association here, I would love to help. That was in the spring. And 24 hours later, he emailed me the invitation to just come. And then I talked to Father David and left his office with joy in my heart, because I knew I was being called to be here. I'm particularly interested in the association group, but I found myself really led to be curious and want to know more about the lay missionary group. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
But that's kind of my story, is that when I was a teenager, my mom was a catechist at a children's rehab center. And I just fell in love with teaching, and especially with kids who had different kinds of developmental, physical, mental, spiritual, social issues. I just fell in love, and I began to do that at a home for more handicapped people. And then I met the Redemptorists, and I felt like I was home. And so I've often told the first Redemptorist I met was Father Mike Brown, and that was wonderful.
And nobody could influence you.
But for a while when I went teaching, I wasn't in much contact with Redemptorists, but I deliberately chose a community where it was very isolated in Newfoundland and rather poor, and all kinds of social issues. And I just loved it. I think I often talk about how the poor ruined me, and I just fell in love with them. But funny enough, our priest was mentally and physically ill, and quite often I would have to lead prayer services, deal with the grieving and the dying, and so I would call on a Redemptorist, an old man from St. John's, to come out, and he came every time I called. And to me, that was the beginning of something. Really, that was the beginning. When I went to Toronto to do my master's, I connected with Redemptorists again, and that was, I think, the beginning of something formal. But I feel as if I've been called to the family all my life, and that this meeting the actual Redemptorists put some form and shape and gave me a spirituality for what I experienced. And so I'm tremendously grateful, and I'm really delighted that we're all here in the same room.
I was introduced to the Redemptorists 20 years ago. Other than that, I had always been raised by diocesan priests. I was fortunate to be able to go to the pilgrimage in 2015 to Rome with the Redemptorist group and the Year of Mercy, and got to know even more Redemptorists and visit St. Alphonsus' home. And I really don't even know why I'm here, except that I know I'm being called to do something. And I don't know if any of you know Father Joseph Dion, but he was the one that said, Mickey, I think you should go to this thing. And I go, well, what is it now you're getting into? And he said, well, just I'll send you some information and just go. And I've been corresponding with Dan, and I'm just really looking forward to being here. And I love the humility and the kindness that I see in the Redemptorists, the sense of humor, and the message of love and redemption. And if I can spread that in any way, I'm very involved in adult formation. I do also a lot of stuff with our SPREAD program. We started SPREAD formation for disabled children, and I just keep answering the call. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. I met the Redemptorists in Toronto, and he was in Vancouver with the Redemptorists. So I always say I came west to seek my fortune, and I found him in Vancouver, and I married him 40 years ago. Yeah. And 6 months after we were married, and we were married in 77, so in June 78, we were invited to join the Redemptorist mission team and see if lay people could work with clergy in preaching parish missions. And 33 years later, we finished working with the Redemptorists on the mission team. We took a little bit of a break, and Bob was ordained a deacon in 1999. and served in parishes. And well, actually, you served in a parish before we were even. He was ordained because we have 3 children, and our youngest one said, "When Daddy's ordained a deacon, what's he going to be able to do that he isn't doing now?" I said, "Well, he's going to," and he was 8 years old. I said, "Well, he's going to be able to baptize, marry, and bury." And he said, "Why do Mary and Barry have to wait till Daddy's ordained to be baptized?" And I wanted to mention something about the motivation and inspiration of St. Alphonsus, because for the years we weren't as connected with the Redemptorists, I went back to my original profession as a dental hygienist. And there I discovered the poor and abandoned are people who live in long-term care, especially those with dementia. And oral health care is sadly neglected. So that's where I spent most of my years in dentistry, is working in long-term care. So getting people with dementia to open their mouth and do cleanings was quite a feat. I used my skills in dancing, singing, humor, animation, and I found that no matter what work I did, wherever I was helping immigrant women, single-parent families, dementia people in long-term care, the spirit of St. Alphonsus guided me.
In 1975, the Edmonton province of Redemptorists, which was the Western Canada outfit, decided to set up a mission team, a parish mission team. There was 5 Redemptorists, 1 brother and 4 priests that started in 75. 2 of those priests were Father David Cottingham and Father Claude Lemieux. Some years later, David joined us as well. But we started together in 78 with them. But the foundation was that I grew up in a Redemptorist parish. And I knew these priests as friends, both as not only as a young boy, but then as a teenager. I actually lived in the rectory for a year, and some of the priests there I really got to know well. Claude Lemieux was a major person in our lives. He witnessed our marriage, baptized some of our kids, and we were the first. He said that out of all the weddings that he did, we were the first 25th anniversary he ever celebrated. So he was a very close friend. Father David Cottingham and Father Claude Lemieux were both with us for a long time on the missions, traveling all across Western Canada, and then when Edmonton and Toronto amalgamated, we found ourselves going right across Canada, right as far as Newfoundland to do missions. So that was a big part of our ministry, and I have to say that being part of reassociating again with the Redemptorists as lay missionaries has called us out to do parish missions at a time when there aren't any Redemptorist priests in Western Canada that are able to do missions. So Joan and I have taken up the call, and we're doing parish missions on our own now. But we still call them Redemptorists.
I started my collaboration with the Redemptorists in 1981 as an employee of Liguori Publications, and that's where I'm still working. I am blessed to collaborate with them in business and a professional environment, and it has been a very rewarding and fulfilling experience. Probably 2000, I was trying to think, 2001, I think Father Paul Curry invited me to some meetings at the Rock Church where I think they were starting to be more formal gatherings with the lay missionaries. So in 2006,
it was one of the
I made my commitment as a lay missionary at that time. So it's been wonderful. I work with Father Byron. We collaborate on projects together, and I've never met a Redemptorist at Liguori who wasn't willing to roll up their sleeves and get the work done. It really has been neat and rewarding. So, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you to all who did all the work to put this together.
I'm a Redemptorist, 52 years, 46 years ordained. I'm presently the superior at our provincial headquarters of the Baltimore province, that's the East Coast, in Brooklyn. And I've been there 7.5 years. Actually, my connection with this whole movement was with Arthur Wendell, who would love to be here. For those of you who might know Arthur, he's a man of our Baltimore province who actually started the Redemptorist Lay Missionaries for us in the Baltimore province. And he was a parish priest in our parish in Manhattan on 3rd Street. And he started with 3 people. And they actually lived in community with us and were employed as Redemptorists, lay missionaries, and took promises. And 2 moved on, 1 man still with the Catholic Worker Movement. And then 1 woman stayed for at least 10 years, living with us and working at the largest residential facility for people with AIDS in New York City called Rivington House. And she and Arthur were chaplains there. They were the full-time chaplains. And when Arthur left, she continued as chaplain and continued living with us. She continues in ministry, but no longer is really that connected to us. And Arthur, because of his illness, he's in our nursing home now. That whole kind of movement stopped. And with Arthur stopping, it hasn't continued in our province as such. Hence, we don't have any folks here. I did actually have 2 couples who were planning, but then couldn't come.
I'm just living in Chicago, and I'm here because I'm working with lay people. So my boss is lay people, and they are coming here. And because I'm working with them, so they have to be here. So it's kind of like a reverse. But I hope that after this kind of gathering, my relationship with the people that they come in for this weekend no longer like I work for them and they work for me. We work together. I never thought of that until this kind of event came in, and I had to change the whole relationship with my boss in Chicago. That I work with him, I have to report to him and responsible for it to him. And so hopefully this kind of event that will help us to work side by side with each other instead of who will be the boss now.
Redemptorist, 32 years professed. I live in Liguori, so along with Byron, Greg, and then of course Wendy and Mike and Craig, and Bessie, part of the lay missionary gathering once a month at Liguori. I'm here to kind of hear more of the stories about what draws people to the congregation. I know what drew me was, of course, the charism, but also the words of plentiful redemption were very attractive to me. And this weekend to hear what draws you, and then how the lay missionary vocation is played out in different units of North America.
I enjoyed sharing our charism with people, whether it be Redemptorists or laity, and it's where our band have always made sure that's been a part of it. And so, of course, when we went to St. Louis, the group was there functioning without the Redemptorists, and so, of course, they just had to reconnect with people, letting us know that we're interested. And so we've been gathering for 1.5 years now, where I've been at Houston or Chicago, wherever I've been, it's always been about sharing our charism with others. I even have a friend who was interested because he's working with people who, I should probably let him talk about that, but who are abandoned. And so therefore our spirituality can help you in doing that. And so Chris, he'll probably tell you a little bit about that. But it's something that when I've been able to share the Redemptorist charism, you can just see it makes a difference to other people's lives. And when people get the spirit of it, the charism of it, then they're able to share that with others. It's something that you can see the gift keeps on giving. And so it's a gift that we have that we're not exclusive owners on, but we truly are people who are willing to lead others to that.
I am a Redemptorist converter, 20 years professed and 15 years ordained, and right now I'm the Vice Provincial Episcopal here. I'm here with 6 of our lay partners, representing all levels of collaboration, coming from California, from Texas. So I'm glad that they made it here. And it's very joyful, not only for me, not only for the Secretariat, but for the North American Conference and for the whole congregation. And we are very grateful for your presence, because it's a big sacrifice on your part. Set aside the days here this weekend just to come here. And that speaks volumes about your support and your love, and your dedication to the Redemptorist charism, and for that I am personally grateful.
I run the spirituality center of our congregation, exactly in Rome. I am here to share with you some stories of the people who founded our congregation and some other issues connected with our spirituality. I'm supposed also to work and promote our spirituality to lay people. And it happened that exactly this year I was in some countries and I preached mainly to lay people. Spain, Germany, Zimbabwe, Ukraine, Poland, now US. 1 year. And I do believe that this is the time for lay people in our congregation. I think this is a prophetic time. And we know, Jack and Anne, what we have experienced at the chapter. We promise a lot to you. And you can ask provincials and the superiors, what have you promised? Now fulfill that, because if you go through the chapter, to the Acts, you will see how much we promised you. So we stick to that, and I believe that this is the time when the lay people in our congregation should be really and truly involved. And we'll talk about this.
My name is Chris McGosh. I'm from the Wichita, Kansas area. I'm very pleased to be here in the midst of such great people, the same great people that were brought here in one way or another by Redemptorists. So it comes as no surprise that I've always been intrigued with the Redemptorist way of life since I was a little boy, and that's why I'm here.
I am a Redemptorist, you're probably aware of that. I was born in Edmonton. I belong to the Edmonton-Toronto province now because we merged, and I grew up in a Redemptorist parish. And I knew from a very young age, or thought from a very young age, that I wanted to be a priest. And I didn't know there were any other kinds of priests except the Redemptorists that I knew in my parish. And so when they opened a Juvenate, a minor seminary just outside of Edmonton, I signed up, and as time went on, I realized that it was probably good that I didn't know about a whole bunch of others, because I was really at home with the Redemptorists, and we resonate, and so I'm very happy that I found the right place right off the bat. Recently, we're in the process of restructuring, and we have formed, is it 5 conferences?
Yeah.
So North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Europe, Africa, Asia. And believe me, we're having a hard enough time in North America where we all essentially speak the same language. I can't imagine how it's going in Asia and Africa. But anyway, we're attempting everyone to broaden our perspectives and to think more, globally, I guess. 3 provinces in Canada: the Edmonton-Toronto province, Roman Catholic, English-speaking; the Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré province, Roman Catholic, French-speaking; and the Yorkton province, which is Ukrainian Redemptorists. Their liturgical language is sometimes Ukrainian. I mean, they're all perfectly bilingual and function in English mostly, but they are not Roman Catholics, they're Ukrainian Catholics. In the United States, the Denver province in the west covers the whole west. The east coast is Baltimore, and at the south end of that is the Richmond Vice Province. And then kind of all over the place in the U.S. is the Vietnamese Extra Patrium province. Extra Patrium means outside the fatherland. If I get this wrong, correct me, but my understanding is that during the Vietnamese War, Redemptorists came to the States to kind of get away from it all. And the intention, I think, was to, when the war ended, to go back. But it lasted so long that they became, more settled here. And then all kinds of Vietnamese refugees, essentially, moved into the States. And so the Extra Patrium means it's a vice province, but connected not to a mother province, but to Rome, to the general government. And they minister essentially to Vietnamese people in North America.
The Vietnam War has been going on for a long, long time, and it was officially ended in 1975. That was the point when we lost the city of Saigon. I mean, the whole southern part. And right after the communists took over the whole country, so that led to millions of Vietnamese refugees fleeing the communists. And many of them, thousands of them, were captured by the Vietnamese and were sent to the concentration camp. even including many Redemptorist chaplains working in the Southern Republican Army. And so because of politics, of the political kind of turning point, that led to millions of people going looking to somewhere else. So the Redemptors included, they fled the country of Vietnam, and they came, many of them came over here, some went over to Canada, over to Europe, they scattered everywhere. So the 5 original Redemptors, Vietnamese Redemptors, came to the States right after the fall of in 1975. They were then sponsored by the then province of St. Louis. St. Louis province was the one who sponsored the first 5 Vietnamese Redemptors coming from Vietnam. And after that several years, upon the encouragement and recommendation of the Redemptors Conference, seeing that millions of people of Vietnamese coming to the States with no one at the time to help them, because this is the new land, new culture, new language. They were abandoned people. So the Redemptors were one of the first few priests here in the States, and we gradually formed a new unit. And so that's why we were given a name by Rome, extra patrium, outside of our fatherland. So our pastoral priority is to the Vietnamese immigrants living here in the States. So we are not limited to geographical area, but we serve the Vietnamese immigrants.
What we're trying to do is sum up your reaction in the Rock Church where you said there was starts and stops. Okay, we really would like to move away from that. The other thing is, all sorts of people have had training in this and expectation of what is a layperson connected to the Redemptorists. So there's probably enough definitions that we could fill a book. And what we want to do is, with a dialogue with you, can we begin to, across boundaries, come to a shared understanding about what it is that we're trying to see the Spirit doing with this charism and among the lay people, and then wherever it isn't functioning, can we have it function? So my goal is to take what the general chapter said and said we want this gift of lay people involved in our charism to be spread. And our goal in North America is, can we have a shared vision of that? Because we have too many definitions. So really what you're part of is, let's kind of get the definitions, which are very good, because you all have pieces of great things that brought you to this moment. So we want to say, well, we need some of that, we need some of that, we need some of that, and we bring it together and then continue to discern it. So I don't represent any one province. I represent all. So like there are other units who couldn't be here. Yorkton has lay ministers, the province, but they couldn't be here. But so my goal is to connect what we find out from these type gatherings and bring it to them so they're not out of the mix. So even like what you're doing with the video, that's my task, to bring it across. So what we're doing, like this is new for us. This is new, this whole idea of a conference, cross boundaries, instead of a gathering of just Denver or just Baltimore or just Edmonton, Toronto. This is our conference. And as a conference, we will dialogue about this and promote it. So it's a whole new mindset, not only for you, but it's also for the Redemptorists, because conference is new. And how do we do this well? So that's the whole part. And connected to general government, which is really, and that's why Ann and David are so important for this, because some of the early dreamings of the Redemptorists on this, on the general level, they were part of. So it's almost like we got the general piece, and we got a lot of individual pieces. What we need now is a conference piece. How do we pool all this, take the wisdom that we've picked from the different documents that have been created by the Redemptorists, and then say, aha, this is what we mean in the Conference of North America. How we can welcome them, how they can be part of us, how we can invite them for training, how we can do certifications, a shared agreement, a view of ministry. All that is what's going to be our discussion. That's why you're here. So we are not here giving you a package saying, here it is. Where really is, you've got to help us develop the package. That's why we're here. We have a lot of insights, a lot of dreams, and a lot of where we'd like to go, but now we've got to bounce it off real experience and say, what's up? So that's what I'm